With War coming up, I think it's a good time to finally get my review out for the Containment Crew Out of Darts collaboration flywheel, Insutantos. Now, I know what you're thinking, oh, another flywheel, you've done enough reviews on flywheels, do we really need another one? Hold your horses there, viewer, commenter, these are a little different. Since Insutantos are made by Containment Crew, they're made in the same way as Containment Crew Cyclones. They're designed and made from Delrin, acetal, and CNC'd and laser engraved in New York. What makes them different from Cyclones, and from other wheels for that matter, is how much they weigh. They are made to be the lightest wheels on the market, even lighter than stock wheels. For comparison, the stock wheels I measured were around 33.7 millimeters in width with a weight of around 4.3 grams. The Insutantos pair I was sent had an outside diameter of 35.28 millimeters for both wheels, with an inner curved diameter of 34.65 and 34.64 millimeters. As for their weight, 2.86 and 2.9 grams, nearly 1.5 grams lighter than stock wheels. But what is the purpose of them being so light, and why did I mention with War coming up, what does that have to do with anything? Both of those are really good questions. The purpose of Insutantos and the reason for the lightweight is to give you incredibly fast spin-up times. There's almost no delay between the rev trigger being pulled and these getting up to max RPM, which makes them pretty good for HVZ, which not surprisingly is part of the reason why these were made. In a game where timing is pretty darn important, these could be the difference between a zombie being stunned and you being a dead human. But other than that, the size and the weight of these seems to have a direct performance on FPS, as you'll see with these chronograph numbers. For my testing, I put the Insutanto wheels in a stock cage with Neo Rhinos as a direct comparison to my other tests where I've used Hellcats because they're kind of the same motor. I shot 6 Worker 22 round mags through these wheels before chronographing, and I didn't include elite darts or stock darts because in the HVZ world, stock darts just aren't really economical, so I don't expect a lot of people to be using them. In my testing, AccuFakes averaged in at 111.11 FPS with a high of 116.6 and a low of 104.8. Raytheon Waffle Tips averaged at 100.17 with a high of 134.4 and a low of 73.06. Koosh averaged in at 117.92 with a high of 123.8 and a low of 106.5. Before I continue the video, I'd like to give a big thanks once again to Jason Bruno, Big Zen Z, Taybeck, and Foam Blast for their continued support over the Patreon platform. As much as I like making videos for this channel, it doesn't always come free or cheap, like with buying darts for chronographing. So with their continued support, it makes things a bit easier for me, and I greatly appreciate it. If you'd like to support this channel over the Patreon platform, there will be a link in the description below. Once again, thanks to these people for their continued support over Patreon. Let's get back to the Insutanto review. I can already hear some people going, Bobo, those numbers are so low, hashtag go big or go home, hashtag eclipse single stage forever, or hashtag HPA, hashtag what's the point? Like I said earlier, these were partially made with HVZ in mind, and one thing a lot of HVZ games have is an FPS limit. No matter what your feelings are with FPS limits, whether you hate them, whether you like them, whether you feel like they shouldn't exist at all, Insutantos help your build stay under that cap depending on what motor and cage you pair them with, which is great for things like War, which has a 130 FPS cap. So based on the darts that I shot, all those darts would be fine to use at a game like War using Insutantos on Hellcats in a stock cage. Now there are other wheels out there that will help you stay under an FPS cap, like blaster part wheels, which are 1mm smaller than worker wheels, and Insutantos for that matter, but they're heavier and more rigid, so really depending on what cage and motors you put them, they could have a different performance to Insutantos overall. I'm not really sure the science behind Insutantos and their little bit of a flexing that they have to them, how thin they are, how light they are, but they do what they do. Just know that you have other options outside of Insutantos. One of my concerns with Insutantos was how well they keep up with a high rate of fire, seeing how a lot of HVZ players play with rapid strikes and a high rate of fire coming out of their blaster. The theory is that a lighter wheel will lose more of its inertia per dart going through it, whereas a heavier wheel, because of how heavy it is, doesn't lose as much. And over time, that can mean the Insutantos losing a lot of RPM, and you'll notice that, as you shoot more through your rapid strike. However, at the same time, I'm thinking that because these are so light, the motor doesn't really have to work too much to kick the wheel back up to a higher RPM. I only have these in my testing strife and not a full auto blaster, so in order to test this theory, I put in a 22 round worker mag and really went to town on that trigger to try and fire it as fast as I could. At 9 to 10 darts per second, you can hear a drop in RPM before the motor goes into kind of this consistent sound. At the end of the mag, though, the motors really kick the wheels back up to full RPM, so if you have a high DPS build, you will notice a bit of an RPM drop, but these things will really kick back into gear once the mag is done, so I don't see it being a huge deal, even if you use something like a drum. And what is the price point for a pair of these wheels? The price is $18. This is the same price you would pay for Containment Crew Cyclones, but $4.50 more than blaster part wheels, which from my using and from reading other people's results, give you kind of the same performance as these wheels in keeping under an FPS cap, depending on the motor and cage that you use. For the extra cost, you are getting the lightest wheels on the market with an almost instant spin-up time, but it really comes down to the buyer as to whether or not you feel the difference in price is worth the difference in the amount of time it takes to spin both of the sets up. I can understand why someone would go with a different pair of wheels, but I can also understand the appeal of these, which is why I bought a set for myself to use at End War. Overall, I don't recommend these for people who are doing like normal builds or trying to get a higher FPS out of their blaster. With the higher crush cages and the way that these are manufactured and the way they bend, I don't really know how that affects performance, but if you're looking to get pure numbers or just higher numbers out of your Strife or your Rapid Strike or whatever you're going to put these in, I would say to go with a heavier wheel rather than a lighter, smaller one. But for HVZ players, I would say these wheels are pretty good and will help you out, whether it's to stay under an FPS limit or to help you shave off a few milliseconds from your spin-up time. These wheels are pretty great and they're nicely made. So if you're looking to get your hands on some Insutanto wheels for yourself or maybe for someone else, I have a link in the description to where you can get them from containmentcrew.com and from Out of Darts' Etsy store. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, have a great day. Let's see if I can hit this wherever you are. Dang it, too low.